At the beginning of time, science lay dormant, but through the eons, we, humankind, have made the use of the reserves at our disposal. Much has been lost due to inanity and greed, but the gains are colossal due to our vision and insight.
Welcome to Science Insight. In this show we feature planes that fly around the clock higher and safer than ever before. In agriculture, Britain's rivers are at their cleanest since records began, with industrial pollution a thing of the past. In medical, satellites give search and rescue teams a new tool in helping crash victims survive. In profile, a combination of high-tech and the authentic recaptures the action, gore, spectacle, heroics and humiliation of the Roman gladiators. In nature, the sport of kings and millionaires, as horse prices skyrocket around the world. In future, no windscreens, but pilots of supersonic planes will see where they're going even better. Remember this aeroplane? The year was 1988. The plane was called Daedalus, named after the mythological figure who made wings for himself and his son Icarus so they could fly to freedom. Icarus, who might have qualified as the first astronaut, supposedly flew too close to the sun. The wax on his wings melted and he plunged into the sea and drowned. Daedalus, however, flew low and made good his escape. This Daedalus was also human-powered, with the pilot pedalling his way 100 kilometers between the Greek islands of Crete and Santorini. The ultralight plane with long, flexible wings was designed by a team from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. That same team has now branched out to form a company that's building new generations of inexpensive, high-altitude aircraft, using some designs borrowed from Daedalus. Scientists have been trying for years to learn more about the Earth's atmosphere. They've launched a number of experiments using balloons, sounding rockets, high-altitude reconnaissance planes, and even one of the fastest planes in the sky. Now they're looking at one of the slowest planes as a vehicle for studying the atmosphere. This is Perseus, an aircraft that's part glider, part powered plane. Its wispy wings and large propeller are made of strong ultralight composites. It carries a supply of marbled oxygen to help fuel its gas-powered engine when it climbs to the upper reaches of the atmosphere. Perseus is designed to fly twice as high as a commercial jetliner. It carries a payload of scientific instruments in the nose, away from the turbulence of the engine and propeller, so it can collect purer air samples. Perseus has no pilot. An onboard computer interprets commands from the ground and adjusts flight controls. Researchers have found that a pilotless plane is an advantage when studying something like the ozone shield over Antarctica. That's because it's dangerous to fly in the extreme cold, and they note it's impossible to glide home from Antarctica if you have engine trouble. With a remote-controlled plane, changes can be made without safety concerns about the pilot. If this were a manned aeroplane, even slight modifications that take the team only a matter of hours to perform would bring operations to a complete halt. Extensive tests would need to be undertaken because a pilot's life would be at risk. In 1988, Greg Zak was one of the cyclist pilots of Daedalus. Now he pilots Perseus, using skills learned flying gliders and powered model aeroplanes. An open stretch of dry desert lake bed serves as a runway for the plane. After a final check of all systems, the truck accelerates to launch Perseus like a kite on a string. When Perseus reaches an altitude of 200 meters, the tow line is released, and the ground team starts the engines. Greg Zapp keeps visual contact with the plane as he controls takeoffs and landings. The ground team flies the plane once it's airborne. Perseus hoped to reach 25,000 meters, but topped out at about 17,000. Still remarkable for a remote-controlled prop plane. Scientists say the best way to determine the atmospheric effects of man-made chemicals is to fly slowly through specific areas. Perseus flies at just 45 kilometers per hour, ideal for such research. But Perseus is just the first in a series. Other planes are being built using what's been learned in these tests. One aircraft, similar to Perseus but with twin engines, is currently undergoing flight testing and may be able to fly for 24 hours at 22,000 meters, monitoring the globe from the edge of the atmosphere. Most of us have seen the old pictures of Charles Lindbergh's Spirit of St. Louis, the plane Lindbergh flew on his 1927 solo flight of the Atlantic. The plane looked a little strange because it didn't have a windscreen. The only way Lindbergh could see forward was to use a periscope or side-slip the plane and look out the side windows. The plane was designed with an extra fuel tank where the windscreen would be. The exterior was then smoothed out to cut wind resistance. Engineers are now designing futuristic planes without windscreens for some of the same reasons. Take a look at this. This may well be the aircraft flight deck of the future. This computer-generated graphic shows a rough view of the instrument layout in the next generation of supersonic transport planes. But something's missing. As we move out the side window, we see there isn't any front window, no windscreen, no way for the pilot to look straight ahead. The aerodynamic design of this high-speed aircraft would be severely affected if a windscreen interrupted the bullet-like shape. The only supersonic transport now flying commercially, the British-French Concorde, was designed with a movable nose section that makes the plane more aerodynamic at higher altitudes. But the nose has to be lowered for landings and takeoffs and operations below 10,000 feet to allow the pilots to see where they're going. Pilots of the new high-speed planes will see ahead by watching monitors, like these being tested in airborne flight simulators. Instead of the usual view of the runway ahead, seen through the windscreen, pilots will see something like this on their monitors, a combination of radar and other electronic views, and what's seen by a video camera mounted in the plane's tail. Looking ahead electronically will save the weight and complexity of the drop nose design. And the electronic capabilities of the new planes should allow pilots to see better no matter what the weather. There was a time that when a boat went down or a plane crashed at sea, many survivors only had two chances: slim and none.
Now for the ready H3 and the ready C-130 on the line. EPIRB, 120 miles east of Cape Hatteras. Message from us, Corpus provides.
But nowadays, if the person survives the crash or the sinking of the boat, rescue is only minutes away. crash victims have much better chances of survival because of the faster response time of rescue teams. Teams find the crash sites quicker because of new technology, leading to better rescue systems. On boats, it's called an emergency position indicating beacon. The signal is activated when the device is immersed in water. On aeroplanes, the emergency locator transmitter is tucked out of the way. It's triggered by the force of the crash landing. Suppose a plane crashed in the mountains of Washington State. Once activated, the emergency beacon transmits a continuous signal that is picked up by a search and rescue satellite. The satellite relays the signal to a local user terminal, like this one at an Air Force base in the central United States.
And it looks like there could be the start of a signal right here at this point. Okay, yeah, we got a good signal over here. We're in good shape.
After analysing the signal, the site of the accident can be narrowed down to a 15 to 20 kilometre radius. This information is passed to a mission control centre, then on to the rescue control centre nearest the plane crash. Air Force personnel alert the Civil Air Patrol and other search and rescue teams.
And a SAR sat hit in the same area. Request that a search mission be opened with the Washington Civil Air Patrol. 23rd Operations Center, request helo support for ELT search and coordinates 4715 north, 12042 west.
But sometimes the beacons don't work, or a plane is down under thick forest cover, or the weather is too bad to allow pilots to spot the wreckage on the ground. To try to increase the chances of successful rescue in beaconless crashes, rescuers from the Goddard Space Center took to the woods near San Francisco. They were there to plant a plane wreck, or at least to simulate two crashes by stacking parts of planes under the thick forest canopy, all to test the synthetic aperture radar, or SAR, aboard a DC-8 to see if the wrecks could be spotted. The SAR is usually used in satellite studies of forestry and geography, but this time the SAR was trying to see beneath the trees. When analysed at Goddard, the images showed bright spots that could be wrecks. After filtering out known features like buildings and towers, the wrecks were both located. So now, rescue workers have another tool in helping crash victims survive. This idyllic scene could be in the heart of the English countryside, but in fact it's only a few miles from the largest and densest population belt in Britain. The River Tame flows through the heart of the Midlands, location of the world's first modern industrial city, Birmingham. A few years ago, it was one of the most polluted rivers in the country, full of industrial waste and rubbish. The water was so dirty that treated sewage flowing into the river was cleaner than the river water itself. Now, thanks to a concerted effort by the government and the local environment agency, the water is pure, and what was a stinking eyesore has been restored to its original state. The river was virtually devoid of life when it was used as a natural open drain to take industrial pollutants away from Birmingham's factories. The River Tame now supports a healthy fish population. The residents of Birmingham are seeing the fruits of 30 years of really big investment and serious work on pollution control. They've turned what was a fishless river, an embarrassing visual intrusion, into something which offers potential for the environment, for recreation, and for water resources. The Minworth Sewage Treatment Works is the largest inland sewage works in the country. It is self-sufficient in energy and fully computerized. The British government has set a target to even further improve water quality so that 91% of rivers will meet their objectives by 2005. Another $14 billion has been earmarked for improvements over that time. As demonstrated by the Thames in London, the British are setting the pace in water quality improvement. There used to be a jibe that Britain was the dirty man of Europe, but all that has changed. Improvements in water, land and air quality over the last 10 years have been outstanding. With so much heavy industry nearby and the vast urbanisation of Birmingham and other Midland cities, the River Thames is a visible reminder of Britain's determination to get to grips with industrial pollution. Leonardo da Vinci was famous for his developments in the science of warfare, but the greatest practitioners in the deadly art were the legions of the Roman Empire. As the empire started its slow decline, Romans demanded bread and circuses from their emperors. These weapons, combat helmets and armor vividly bring to life the splendor and brutality of the arena. For more than 500 years, spectacular events in amphitheaters, circuses and theaters were the most important leisure activities of the masses throughout the Roman Empire. Using the British Museum's vast collection of Roman artifacts and pieces lent by other European museums, the exhibition recreates the world of chariot races, epic gladiatorial clashes, blood and despair. The curators wanted to give a clear picture of what sensational entertainment was like in Rome. Hollywood gives us its own sensational picture, as well as futuristic sagas based on the same themes. But there is nothing like the actual evidence of Roman artifacts to bring the era of the original gladiators to life. One of the strengths of the exhibition is that it's not afraid to draw modern parallels with ancient Rome. Chariot racing had an enduring popularity, partly because the rewards and hazards of the race were seen as a metaphor for life. As in Star Wars, hundreds of thousands of racegoers packed the stands at the Circus Maximus to watch. Apart from Hollywood, there is a modern parallel. The obvious link to the ancient spectacle is to chariot racing. With chariot racing, there are people who lay their lives on the line, jostling for the lead as they drive at great speed around a circuit. Formula One racing drivers do much the same thing today, and in terms of their rewards and the associated dangers, the two are comparable. Helmets and slick fire retardant suits are essential for the safety of Formula One drivers, but they also add to the glamour and mystique, just as the gladiators' essential armor did. As far as we know, cigarette and computer companies did not advertise their wares in ancient Rome, but if they had, the gladiators and charioteers would have been the ones chosen to carry their messages. Hollywood is well represented in the exhibition, the chariot race from Ben-Hur and Ridley Scott's Gladiator being the last in a long line of epics. There's a CD-ROM version of gladiatorial combat, and a major film program accompanies the exhibition. But it's the small items which bring back the games of 2,000 years ago with renewed vitality. Like the football clubs today, the shows satisfied people's needs for excitement and hero worship. These items were eagerly sought by souvenir hunters. The top gladiators, charioteers and actors were folk heroes. Fan clubs developed, bets were made, political issues aired, and the latest victories and defeats endlessly discussed. It was even quite common for brawls to break out amongst the fans. Not a lot has changed. Scientific methods are playing an ever-increasing role in the training and breeding of racehorses. This may help explain the recent blowout in sale prices worldwide. There's no question the market for racehorses is booming. Tattersalls at Newmarket in the UK, the world's oldest bloodstock sales company, is experiencing a bonanza of record-breaking prices. This year's sale saw the average price of a horse go up by 62% to $75,000. Total sales were a record $60 million, giving an increase of 49% on last year's figures. For Jamie Railton, ex-jockey turned agent, the week's high prices could have proved an embarrassment. He believed the last filly on his list, because of her broodmare potential, was worth $25,000 without putting a saddle on. She'd come from good breeding stock and had been nurtured carefully since birth. But horses have an awful habit of letting you down. Even so, he was hoping for the best. And sure enough, as Jamie watched his horse go on sale, the bids for her kept going higher and higher, eventually reaching $460,000. The horse had been sired by Unforwain, a stallion with a strong reputation, but this was phenomenal. His reaction was mostly relief. It's his job to sell horses for his clients and get the best price. In a hot market like this, the strain is considerable, but so is his commission, a handsome 5%. The buyer of Jamie's horse, Ian Boulding, was optimistic. He expects his investment will bring a fourfold return once the horse has won a race. But like all horse people, he remains philosophical. You just hope you bought a good horse. Unforwain is a great sire and a great sire of fillies. If this filly just wins a listed race, she's worth her money and more. This sort of animal, if sold as a broodmare, and if she'd won a race, could make $2 million. The pundits believe it's the economic feel-good factor that determines the upward movement in the horse market, in the same way as the luxury goods market generally. The horse market is booming around the world, in Australia, in America, elsewhere in Europe, in Ireland, in France. Earlier this year, the Newmarket sales set a European record $7 million for a horse. The next horse made $4 million and another $2 million. There is no question the market is flying high. The rise in the horse market has taken off so fast that market analysts are unwilling to predict how long it will continue. Meanwhile, the breeders look on with satisfaction.
Close to the ground, standing on